Hey, how's it going, everybody? Welcome to another daily movie review coming to you live from the COVID bunker. Suffering through COVID, trying to stay awake, watching movies all day. We're going to talk about some of these movies I've been watching. Today, we're going to be talking about a recently released film called She Dies Tomorrow. It just came out on the 7th of August, so it's a little while ago. It's directed by Amy Seimetz. It's written by her as well. It stars Caitlin Scheel, Jane Addams, Kentucker Audley, Katie Aselton, Chris Messina, Tunde Adebimpe, Jennifer Kim, Olivia Taylor Dudley, Josh Lucas, and others. The plot synopsis is Amy thinks she's dying tomorrow, and it's contagious. So this is a very indie film. Comes out of the Austin film scene. Kind of looks like I don't know what would be, the Austin film scene. Those movies they make in Austin. It's all like the same people and the same directors and the same actors, and they're all part of some sort of weird movie making collective. And this comes out of there. This is Amy Seimetz's second feature length film. I believe she did one in 2011 or 12, which I can't remember the name of right now, but I'd never seen it before. This is her second feature film. It's billed as kind of a science fiction, horror, drama, comedy. I guess some people found there to be some sort of black humor in it, which I suppose there is. There is, to be fair. I don't want to be overly dismissive. So what is this movie about? This movie is about, at the end of the day, hipster millennial malaise, midlife crisis. It's about depression. It's about apathy and how that can kind of act as a social contagion. How you can pass on your apathy, your depression, your darkness to other people, your influence that you have, your negativity, and how that manifests in your relationships. And that's kind of it. The movie is not really about answering any questions. It's just about making observations, even if the answers to the questions that some of these characters are facing are completely obvious. You kind of have like a group of middle-aged, like I said, kind of millennial hipster types. They're all kind of miserable. They all kind of have nothing. They all kind of live for themselves. Completely insular, completely narcissistic, selfish, kind of ugly of spirit people. I'm not sure if most people would feel that the characters are that way. Maybe that's me projecting. But it's like one of these things where it's like a foregone conclusion. It's like you're unhappy because you're alone and because you've come to this point in your life where you haven't done anything except live for yourself. You haven't built a life outside of your own existence. When you come to a point in your life where you have to do something bigger than yourself. And if you don't, these are the kinds of things that happen. You have a crisis of identity, and that happens to everybody. That's why, I kind of referred to it as like a midlife crisis, because I think everybody, once you've gotten enough road behind you, you can take inventory of your life and you start looking back to see if your life has been worth anything and what you've accomplished. You've had accomplishments and failures by the time you're middle age, right? And nowadays, it's even sooner. I went through this kind of thing when I was like 25, where I was like really 25, between the ages of like 25 and say 29. Felt really unmoored, feeling really lost, really depressed, really apathetic. Definitely probably pass that on to a few people. So it kind of uses this idea of a contagion, but only slightly. It's never directly alluded to or directly said. It's just kind of in the subtext. You just kind of, if you're paying attention and you're watching the movie, you're like, oh, they're spreading depression to each other. They're just spreading malaise, apathy, like I said. I don't know. It was a kind of a very one-note movie. There isn't a lot to really dive into other than what I already kind of said. Because I think the movie is almost like, and I hate to put it this way, but it's like too cowardly to actually make a fucking point. It just wants to observe. It just wants to observe this process of being depressed and alone and kind of implicate everybody. Everybody's shitty. Everybody, doesn't matter if you're married, in your relationship, you have kids, you all suck. You all have reasons to be miserable like me. It feels very defensive. The movie feels very defensive. It feels like a kind of like a projection. It's very weird. Also, it's definitely got a chip on its shoulder when it comes to men and men's roles in women's lives in a very kind of abstract way, and I think you could miss it if you aren't paying close attention. But it definitely kind of has like this weird. It has all different types of men. It has kind of overbearing men, or men that kind of like pretend to listen but don't really, and then it has kind of like your cuck, your simp kind of guy that is so passive that he's also an asshole. There's no escaping. There's just no escaping it for dudes in this movie. It's definitely more of like a female-centric. I would say even it's vaguely a feminist piece. And if you've ever listened to this show, or if you have since the beginning, you would know the only overt feminist allegory that I like is Under the Skin, starring Scarlett Johansson. And that's also kind of a weird, abstract science fiction movie, but it's a much better movie, much more interesting movie. Yeah, I don't know. I couldn't recommend this to anybody unless you're just like really bored, unless you're really into just indie film. Because I will say this, some of it is shot very well. I really loved the cinematography on this movie. It looks amazing. And I think it could have been an effective kind of mood piece, but I feel like it gets in its own way a lot. This guy, Jay Keitel, was the cinematographer. Got to give a shout out to Jay Keitel. He's really great. He does some great work here. And what else has he done? A lot of shorts and TV shows. Not much I've actually heard of, but he does good work. I would definitely watch something he shot. Just because if I found out that this guy Jay Keitel shot a movie, I'd probably check it out. It was interesting and definitely uses its budget well in that respect. It's kind of, it's got that indie movie, especially from that Austin scene where it's very naturalistic lighting, and it kind of punctuates it with this kind of almost like cosmic, phantasmagorical kind of lighting schemes at certain times when they're trying to like imbue to the viewer that this is sort of a heightened experience. We're feeling something. We're going through an emotion. This is an overwhelming thing. We're trying to find the etymology of our pain. Because gets into that stuff, and it works. A lot of it works pretty well. I would say that stuff works pretty well. The performances, they're like mumblecore indie performances. Naturalistic. Nobody's like bad. Nobody's really good either. They're kind of just there. It feels just very underwhelming. Kind of the whole way through, I was really, it's a weird thing. Like I was watching it, and I could have just walked away at any point of the movie. I could have just shut it off and completely disengaged. Because once you're about 25 minutes into the movie, like it just has completely revealed itself. And it does not have much interest in revealing or going any deeper into its subject matter. Maybe I'm missing something. Maybe something went over my head. I don't know. I know the director is out there kind of, like I said before, I felt like this movie is kind of defensive. She's defensively kind of giving interviews and correcting the record on interpretations of the film, which I thought was just so weird, especially if you have a movie like this. This is like purposely kind of obtuse and vague and abstract, and it's kind of clear what some of those things are about, but some of what you should want an audience to do is kind of fill in the holes for you, make it more of a personal experience for them. But no, she wants people to know exactly what this movie is about. I did not read those interviews because, frankly, I wasn't that interested in hearing the answer. I just really wasn't. I was kind of just happy to take away what I took away from it. I was not intrigued enough to be like, well, what is the answer? What is at the bottom of this? Just wasn't. But I just thought it was a weird thing for her as an artist to kind of want to go and tell people what they're supposed to take away from a movie specifically like this. It's not like a puzzle box and that there is a solution, there is an answer. It's not set up that way. It didn't feel like that kind of experience. So maybe I just completely misread the movie and I was supposed to see it as some sort of mystery to be solved, but it didn't really feel like that. It felt like a mood piece. And like I said, I thought it could have been effective, but there isn't enough there to latch onto other than just the vaguest basic idea of like of how negativity spreads and how you spread apathy to other people. It's really it. There wasn't much else there. I wish there was. I think you could have done something with a little bit of a stronger, like kind of a narrative through line, or we had some sort of something to latch onto, because it's like it feels very like smart 20-year-old. You know, if you're a 21-year-old person and you've read some philosophy books and you're kind of maybe a little ahead of the curve when it comes to people your own age, people would think you're really deep if you came up with something like this, right? You'd be like, wow. Because sometimes just knowing, especially when you're younger, just knowing what questions to ask or what ideas to probe is enough to get kind of cred, right? Some sort of intellectual cred. But the older you get, what really makes you smart is when you can provide some sort of coherent answer to the problem. Some sort of retort to the question. You can't just leave the question out there. And that's what this movie does. It just kind of leaves it out there and doesn't even give you enough to give a fuck about even figuring out the answer. Not for any of these characters, because they're not characters. They're just kind of archetypes of hipsters. All different levels of hipsters. Married hipsters. Single hipsters. Weird hipsters. Lesbian hipsters. Hanging out in their pool talking about menstruation. Good stuff. Yeah, so I definitely cannot recommend She Dies Tomorrow. Unless you're really curious, unless you're like me. You're like one of these kind of people that you're just going to watch it. You're going to watch most movies. So you watch She Dies Tomorrow, I guess. Yeah, I got nothing else. I can't even believe I went 12 minutes on that movie. I saw it at 3.5 minutes on the little timer here. I was like, oh, fuck, I'm like done talking about this. But we always find a way. I know how to talk. I can do that. Not always good stuff. Sometimes it's, I'll repeat myself a bunch and it'll be redundant information. But, hey, what are you going to do? All right, everybody. Thanks for watching. Thanks for listening. If you'd like to know more about Zoobox, there's a bunch of links in the description for Facebook, for our Instagram, for my personal Twitter. Also, if you'd like to make a recommendation for one of these daily videos, throw it in the comments and I'll put it on the list. All right, everybody. You have a good one. And don't watch She Dies Tomorrow. It's not worth it.